Jasmine unmasks Trump's beauty-based hiring he froze in 42 seconds hook. In a single, electrifying moment, Jasmine Crockett stood before a packed congressional hearing, her voice steady, her gaze unflinching, as she unleashed a revelation that left Donald Trump speechless for 42 agonizing seconds. The room buzzed with tension, cameras zoomed in, and the world watched as she exposed a truth about Trump's hiring practices that no one saw coming. A bombshell so potent it shook the foundations of his carefully crafted image. What was this secret, and how did Jasmine uncover it? The answer lies in a story of courage, persistence, and an unyielding quest for justice. Jasmine Crockett had always been a force to be reckoned with. As a congresswoman from Texas, she'd built a reputation for speaking truth to power, her words sharp and her resolve unshakable. But on this particular day, in a congressional hearing room packed with lawmakers, aides, and media, she was about to take on the biggest challenge of her career. The subject, former President Donald Trump, and allegations that his hiring practices, both in business and politics, were driven not by merit but by a shallow obsession with appearances. The stakes were high, the spotlight blinding, and Jasmine was ready. The hearing was called to investigate claims of discriminatory practices in Trump's business empire, specifically within his real estate and media ventures. For years, whispers had circulated about how Trump prioritized physical appearance over qualifications in his hiring decisions. Former employees had shared stories of being judged not on their resumes, but on their looks, with Trump allegedly favoring those who fit a specific aesthetic, all polished and camera-ready. These claims, long dismissed as gossip, had never been substantiated in a public forum. Until now, Jasmine had spent months preparing for this moment. Her team had combed through thousands of pages of documents, interviewed dozens of former employees, and uncovered a pattern that was impossible to ignore. The evidence pointed to a systemic issue. Trump's hiring decisions, particularly for high-profile roles, were heavily influenced by what he called the look. It wasn't just about competence, it was about beauty as defined by Trump's narrow standards. Women, in particular, faced intense scrutiny, with some alleging they were passed over for promotions or fired for not meeting an unspoken standard of appearance. As Jasmine took her seat at the hearing, she felt the weight of the moment. Across from her sat Trump's legal team, a formidable group of attorneys ready to deflect and deny. The room was a powder keg, with supporters of Trump in the audience ready to dismiss any accusations as politically motivated attacks. But Jasmine wasn't there to play politics. She was there to hold a mirror up to the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it was. The hearing began with the usual formalities, opening statements, procedural remarks, and a parade of witnesses offering carefully curated testimony. Trump's attorneys leaned heavily on his business acumen, painting him as a savvy leader who demanded excellence. They argued that his hiring practices were rigorous, designed to ensure only the best represented his brand. But Jasmine wasn't buying it. She'd seen the documents, heard the stories, and knew the truth was far uglier. When it was her turn to speak, Jasmine rose, her presence commanding the room. She began with a simple question directed at one of Trump's former HR directors, a man named Richard Hensley, who had worked for the Trump Organization for over a decade. "Mr. Hensley," she said, her voice calm but piercing, "can you confirm that Mr. Trump personally reviewed headshots of female applicants for executive roles at his properties?" The room fell silent. Hensley shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes darting to Trump's legal team. I'm not sure I can recall specific instances," he stammered, but Jasmine wasn't letting him off that easily. She produced a stack of internal emails, obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request, that showed Trump explicitly requesting photos of applicants before approving hires. One email, dated from 2015, read, "Send me the headshots. I need to see if they've got the look for the front office." The audience gasped. Trump's attorneys objected, claiming the emails were taken out of context, but Jasmine pressed on. She turned to another witness, a former employee named Sarah Mitchell, who had worked as a marketing coordinator at one of Trump's hotels. "Ms. Mitchell," Jasmine said, "can you describe the hiring process you experienced?" Mitchell, visibly nervous but resolute, recounted her story. She had applied for a promotion to a senior marketing role, one she was eminently qualified for, with a master's degree and years of experience. But during her interview, she was told by a supervisor that Trump preferred a certain type for visible roles. "They said I needed to work on my presentation," Mitchell explained. "I thought they meant my pitch, but later I overheard a manager say I didn't have the Trump look. Too plain, not glamorous enough." The testimony hit like a thunderbolt. Reporters scribbled furiously, and social media began to buzz with clips of the exchange. Jasmine didn't stop there. She called witness after witness, each one adding to the mosaic of evidence. A former assistant manager at a Trump golf course described being asked to wear more makeup to impress the boss. A male employee recounted how he was overlooked for a role because he wasn't tall enough to fit the brand. The stories painted a clear picture. Trump's hiring was less about talent and more about aesthetics, a practice that disproportionately disadvantaged women and minorities. As the hearing progressed, Jasmine's questioning grew sharper. She presented data showing that over 80% of executive hires at Trump's properties from 2010 to 2020 were women under 35, many with limited experience compared to other candidates. She cited internal memos where Trump's team referred to certain hires as decoration for events. The evidence was damning, and the room was electric with anticipation. Then came the moment everyone would remember. Jasmine turned her attention to a video deposition from a former Trump Organization executive, played on a large screen for all to see. The executive, under oath, admitted that Trump had a beauty-based hiring policy for certain roles, particularly those in public-facing positions. He wanted people who looked like they belonged on TV. The executive said, "It wasn't just about skills, it was about the image." Jasmine paused, letting the words hang in the air. Then, with every eye in the room on her, she addressed the committee directly. "This isn't about business excellence," she said. "This is about discrimination. It's about reducing people, especially women, to their appearance, denying them opportunities based on arbitrary standards. This is about a man who built an empire on the backs of those he deemed beautiful while dismissing the talent of everyone else." The room was silent, but all eyes turned to Trump's legal team. Their lead attorney, a seasoned litigator named Paul Grayson, stood to respond. He argued that the practices were standard in industries like hospitality and media, where image is part of the brand. "Mr. Trump ran a business, not a charity," Grayson said. "He had every right to choose employees who aligned with his vision." But Jasmine was ready. She pulled out her final piece of evidence, a leaked audio recording from a 2018 meeting where Trump himself was heard discussing hiring for a new hotel project. "I don't care about their resumes," his voice boomed through the speakers. "Get me someone who looks like they belong on a magazine cover. That's what sells." The room erupted. Reporters shouted questions, and Trump's attorneys scrambled to object, but the damage was done. The audio was the smoking gun, undeniable proof of what Jasmine had been building toward all day. She stood tall, her voice cutting through the chaos. "This is not about branding," she said. "This is about fairness. This is about the law, and no one, not even a former president, is above it." For 42 seconds, the room was frozen. Trump's legal team sat in stunned silence, their usual bravado replaced by pale faces and whispered consultations. The cameras captured every moment, broadcasting the scene to millions watching live. On social media, the hashtag #JasmineUnmasks began trending, with users posting clips of the audio and praising Crockett's relentless pursuit of the truth. But Jasmine wasn't done. She turned to the committee chair and requested that the evidence be submitted for further investigation by the Department of Justice. "This isn't just about one company," she said. "This is about a pattern of behavior that violates federal anti-discrimination laws. We cannot let it stand." The hearing adjourned shortly after, but the impact was immediate. News outlets ran headlines like Crockett's bombshell, Trump's hiring exposed, and 42 seconds that shook Trump's empire. Commentators debated the legal implications, with some predicting lawsuits from former employees and others speculating about political fallout. On X, posts ranged from praise for Jasmine's courage to accusations that the hearing was a politically motivated stunt. One user wrote, "Jasmine Crockett just dropped a truth bomb that'll echo for years. #JasmineUnmasks. Another countered, "This is just another witch hunt against Trump. Nothing new." Behind the scenes, Jasmine's team was already preparing for the next steps. They knew the fight was far from over. Trump's attorneys would likely file motions to discredit the evidence, and his supporters would rally to his defense. But Jasmine was undeterred. She had spent her career fighting for justice, from her days as a public defender to her time in Congress, and this was no different. The truth, she believed, would always find a way. In the days that followed, the story dominated the news cycle. Former employees came forward with new allegations, corroborating the evidence presented at the hearing. Advocacy groups called for federal investigations into Trump's businesses, citing violations of Title Roman VII of the Civil Rights Act. Legal experts weighed in, noting that the audio could be grounds for class action lawsuits from those denied opportunities based on appearance. Jasmine, meanwhile, faced a barrage of criticism from Trump's allies. Some called her a showboat, accusing her of grandstanding for political gain. Others went further, attacking her background and qualifications, but she refused to be silenced. In a press conference the next day, she addressed her critics head-on. "This isn't about me," she said. "This is about the countless women and men who were judged not for their talent but for their looks. This is about accountability." The fallout continued to ripple. On X, users shared stories of their own experiences with workplace discrimination, inspired by Jasmine's stand. One post read, "I was told I wasn't pretty enough for a promotion at my old job. Jasmine Crockett's fight is for all of us." Another user wrote, "Trump's been getting away with this for decades. Thank you, Jasmine, for calling it out." As the weeks passed, the Department of Justice announced it would review the evidence from the hearing. While no formal charges had been filed, the investigation sent shockwaves through Trump's business empire. Some of his properties reported a dip in bookings, and sponsors began distancing themselves from his brand. The man who had once prided himself on his image was now facing a reckoning, one sparked by a single congresswoman who refused to back down. Jasmine Crockett's name became synonymous with courage. She received letters and emails from across the country, from people who saw her as a beacon of hope in a polarized world. But for Jasmine, the fight was never about fame. It was about justice, about giving a voice to those who had been silenced. She knew the road ahead would be long, with legal battles and political attacks still to come. But as she looked back on those 42 seconds, when the truth hung heavy in the air and the room stood still, she knew it was worth it. The story of Jasmine Crockett's unmasking of Trump's beauty-based hiring practices wasn't just a moment in a hearing. It was a turning point, a challenge to a system that valued appearance over substance. And for those who watched it unfold, it was a reminder that one voice, armed with evidence and conviction, could change the conversation. Jasmine had done just that, and the world was listening.